Hello and welcome to our 30 Under 30 live chat. My name is Kat Benson, 30 Under 30 alumnus. I coach ODP and youth soccer in Kansas, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Today's panel of 30 Under 30 participants will be discussing building a winning team culture. But before we get started with the questions, let's meet our 30 Under 30 participants. Starting with Luke.
How you doing? Glad to be here. My name is Luke Sanford, and I'm the head coach at Indiana Wesleyan. Graduated from Houghton College, and I've been to Indiana Wesleyan about a year. Previous to this, I was assistant coach at Point Loma Nazarene. Looking forward to talking with you guys today.
Thanks, Luke. What about you, Sam?
Hey, my name is Sam Etherington. I'm the head women's soccer coach at Louisiana College. I graduated from Nicholls State University and spent the past 2 years in Dubuque, Iowa at the University of Dubuque, and just super happy to be part of the 30 Under 30 and kind of get to know all these people.
Thanks. Lizzie?
Hey, my name is Lizzie Shaughnessy. I'm from Atlanta, grew up playing soccer here, and I coach club soccer at North Atlanta Soccer Association, and then I'm a high school teacher and also coach at Blessed Trinity High School, the girls varsity here.
And Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Myrie from Anderson University in Indiana. We're a Division III school. Grew up in Northern Virginia, played at Messiah College, and also been an assistant coach at Luther College and Carnegie Mellon University. So great to hang out with you guys today and looking forward to our talk.
Thank you. So before we get started, just a quick reminder, if any viewers have a question during today's live chat, please tweet them to us using the hashtag NSCAALive. So this first question will kind of go out to the whole panel. You guys can answer as you please. Talking about building a winning team culture, I guess the first step is, what are some of the components of team culture?
I think overall it encompasses just being united as a team in your purpose, your vision, and just a common understanding of what you want to be on and off the field. The idea of excellence, walking the talk and talking the walk, where everyone feels value and everyone has sort of a given and buy-in to that mission and process of what you want to be about.
Yeah, I'll kind of follow on from that. I think, everybody's, for each specific team, the components are going to be slightly different. It's kind of going to, specify what they want to change from to where they want to go. Some teams, might be aiming towards a championship. Some teams might be aiming towards making the conference tournament. So how they're going to get there is going to be slightly different. But the main thing is that every single person is on the same page. Because the hardest thing is obviously if one person doesn't agree with it, or that kind of feeds to 2 or 3 people, then it can kind of have an effect on the team culture. So personally, I think one of the most important components is just having everyone on the same page.
I think one of the important things to recognize when you're talking about culture, I think it's sort of encouraging. That's a popular buzzword right now in coaching. But I think when you're talking about culture is to understand the scope or the perspective on winning. So if we're talking about building a winning team culture, that's different probably for each program. Certainly we're all striving to win, but keeping that in perspective and understanding that there's things that transcend the game that I think we can teach through the game. I think each one of us have probably a lot of stories and experiences that we could share with each other about how our lives have been changed through soccer. And I think that when you're building a culture, it's important to keep that in mind, that you have an opportunity as a coach, I think no matter what age, to use your platform to influence the people that you're coaching.
That's very true.
I definitely agree, and going off of kind of what Sam and Jennifer were saying as well, that knowing what the team goals are so that everyone is on the same page, but then everyone has to be committed to achieving that goal and putting the team above themselves and putting the team above their own priorities or their own agenda, and just putting the team above themselves is the only way that you're going to be able to create that culture. If everybody is doing their own thing, then you're not going to have a united team culture no matter what your goals are, you're never going to be united and be one team if everyone has their own agenda. So getting everyone to buy into the fact that they have to put their teammates above themselves and to put the team before their own priorities is certainly a key component, I would say.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think you guys all echoed the sentiment that everyone's got to be rowing in the same boat on the same page with the expectations of whatever that program is. We're going to ask the next question here. What does a winning team culture, a championship culture, look like to you and your program? We'll go ahead and start with Luke on that one.
Yeah, I think that, again, it's unique for each program. And I think the idea of perspective is really important when you're talking about a winning team culture. I don't think that winning and positive or healthy culture necessarily have to go hand in hand. I think there's teams that win, that if you remember that team, you wouldn't necessarily enjoy being a part of the group. Sure, winning is fantastic. All of us as coaches want to win. When we train, we have the idea of winning in mind. But I think that just because you win doesn't mean you have a healthy culture, a positive culture. And a team that might go 500 or something like that, they could still have a very positive team culture. So I think, for me, when building our team culture, I try to be careful about how much I talk about winning, because then this is a really difficult game that we're trying to teach. We all know that soccer can go any way on a given day, and round ball and round post. And so if things don't go your way, does that all of a sudden mean that we don't have a good culture because we're not winning? I think we talk about, champion.
Hello, I think we lost Still with us? All right, Sam, do you have anything to add to kind of what he was mentioning about team culture?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point that, not necessarily does your ratio kind of decide if you have a winning team culture. I mean, for example, when I played in college, I wouldn't say we won any championships, but I think we had a really positive culture. We were all best friends. We all had the same ideas, and we all knew, where we were heading. We were part of a team, I would say, that was changing from a negative culture to a more positive team culture. And with that, some of the things as a player I was part of and some of the things I'm trying to implement in my team as a coach is, just core values and standards of behavior, such as, are we going to be on time to practice? When we get to practice, are we going to sit on the bleachers, or are we going to get with cleats on and pick up a ball and start juggling, because that's time that you have to get better. And simple things like, can we have a big sister, little sister program where, a freshman who comes in has an immediate kind of figure they can go to other than the coach if they have a question about something or concerns about preseason. And, it's just a case of the players kind of buying into that. And, a culture change is not going to happen overnight, but it's a case of the players understanding that the direction you're heading in and believing that, okay, if we persevere with this, we're going to see results on the field. And, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can put up the walls slowly and hopefully get there eventually.
Absolutely. Does anyone have anything to add to kind of that, what team culture looks like to you in your program? All right, we'll move on to the next question, okay? What are things you do with your teams or programs specifically to create a team culture? So maybe something that you do. Sam, you mentioned the big sister, little sister thing, which is great, by the way, as a mentoring coming in. And what are things you guys do with your program?
And just start off, like Sam was mentioning, it's a process. We're coming in, and if you start a new program or just take on a new position, it's an understanding of, get a feel of the team and just what the environment is. And then as a coach, you sort of set the foundation of, this is what we want to be about. And I think as coaches, we want to build championship people and players. For us, we have a sort of tagline, be a champion every day in every way. And that's on the field, off the field, sort of this mentality of, like Luke was mentioning, winning, not everyone wins, but everyone can be a champion how they conduct themselves. And so it's basically, as a coach, building that foundation and then letting the team almost provide that structure and framework Or going back to that buy-in, invest in your leadership. We're really intentional about building up leaders from the seniors to even the underclassmen and making them like, all right, you guys are the servant leaders. Be the example of the hardest workers to reach out. This past spring, our 3 seniors have basically led the way. They're the fittest they've ever been, and it's like that's what we want our program to be about, of finishing strong, leaving nothing out on the field, even if it's that last year, a couple games left in the season. With the leadership, you can do team book studies we do over the summer. Last year we read Training Camp as a Team by John Gordon. It's great just to get everyone sort of common language. It's, all right, what does it mean to be the best? And the idea of stressing servanthood. Each week I pair up the team with someone on the team, and it's just teammate of the week. It's, all right, reach out, encourage that person, grab lunch or dinner with them, and it changes each week. And so we really want to invest in those relationships so that we all care about each other, because if you have a team that cares about each other, they're really going to play for each other on the field. And at the end of this season, we have an MVT. It's most valuable teammate. It's not that player that might have scored all the goals. It's who's the person that's embodied what we want to be about our program. And hopefully each class passes that along, and they build and grow throughout their 4 years in our college. And at the end of the day, be that championship player and person that we want them to be.
Those are some really, really great ideas. I love the idea of the MVT for sure, and the championship behavior and how you conduct your program is big time for sure, Coach. Jennifer, what are some things? Oh, I'm sorry. You just answered the question. Lizzie,
No problem.
what are some things that you do for your program?
Yeah, when we got these topics back in the fall, and then when I looked at the topics, last week when we got the email, I was like, wow, this is exactly what I'm dealing with my team right now. That with my team, I've really been trying to implement a team culture and putting, the team above each other. And I had the girls watch the movie Miracle, and they had to write just like a page reflection about, what they thought a teammate was and what makes a team successful, not necessarily in the sense of winning, but being a team atmosphere. And it was amazing how many of them, use the same words, use the same phrases over and over again. And the biggest one that came up a lot too was trust, that they have to trust each other, and putting each other before themselves. So I think, getting them to understand that, like, it's not about me, it's about the team, and whether I get all the playing time I want or I score the goal, it doesn't matter. If the team is achieving our goal, whatever that may be, that's going to be how we are successful. And I really like what Jennifer mentioned about, like, the teammate of the week. That's something that I was talking to my mentor about, and that's something I'm going to start implementing as well, that I think that I hope will be successful and help create more of a team culture and just get them to just have deeper relationships with each other than just, kind of surface level relationships, I guess.
Right, very true. And Lizzie, while I have you, what are the biggest challenges you see in creating this team culture?
Yeah, so I coach U14 girls and then high school girls, and it's funny how the dynamics of a club team versus a high school team are different, because at the high school they all go to the same school together. So in the high school team, there can be a lot of cliques because they're in different grades. You've got freshmen and seniors, the quote unquote popular kids versus the not popular kids, or whoever the smart ones versus the not so smart ones. There's all these different dynamics, and so I think that's the hardest part, is getting them to understand that it doesn't matter whether you have all the same classes with this person, or it doesn't matter if they're part of your friend group outside of the team. Because you're a part of the team, you should all strive to make each other better and be there for each other, regardless of whether they're in your friend group. So I think with girls, just breaking down those walls of those cliques and just the perceptions that they have of other people, and getting them to understand that, like, whether we're best friends, we're still teammates, and so I need to do everything I can to work hard and make the team better, because that's what's going to make the team achieve our goals.
Very true. Jennifer, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to just get everyone on the same page, and also I think being patient. When I took over Anderson, there was one coach for both the men's and women's program. They split it and came in and basically had the opportunity from ground zero to start our team culture, what we want to be about, and it takes time. Where we were 5 years ago to where we are today, it's not the same. Doesn't mean it's bad or good, but you have to be flexible. know the team, and each year, all right, what did they need? Is this type of player, or just even in your leadership group, how do they react best? So don't think that you're going to come in, create your team culture, and it's going to stay the same for the next 4 or 5 years. You always need those underlying principles of like, all right, what's our values, what are our core, but then how does that look each year takes different shape. And important, too, to involve your team that, yes, as coaches, we want to provide the structure, but it's not all about us. The more that you let the team, like Lizzie said, all right, what is a great teammate or what is a culture, let them invest in and value it, and then they'll actually take ownership and apply it out in their lives. I think the last thing is culture is something that's living and breathing. You can't come in during preseason, talk about it, and then just, all right, we've done our team culture talk, and then just leave it on the shelf. It's something that you have to, every week, remind them about little things of like, all right, remember, be on time, reach out to your teammates. How are you leading from your strengths? And just don't think it's just a day one and that's it. It's every day, just like practice, you're improving, and how into the team you're coming together each day.
Yeah, I kind of want to follow on from what Jennifer was saying in terms of it's not just going to happen overnight, and this is something that that I'm actually dealing with right now, and I found that it's a case of sometimes if you want to create that positive team culture in the external look of the team from where your team stands, sometimes it looks as if you guys are often taking one step back to go 2 steps forward, Like, for example, if you're taking over a team, you're going to take over a wide range of players that you've had no contact before. Now, some of those players might love what you're trying to do. Some of those players might not like what you're trying to do. So you have that time period of figuring out who's going to buy into you trying to build this team culture, and then often there's a lot of them that don't and decide that they want to go in a different direction. So sometimes you lose some players, and that's your one step back, but it takes the rest of those players that are still left and want to be part of the team to really buy into what you're trying to build from the ground up and in that winning team culture, and kind of stand by you as you move forward and try and get the right players to be part of your team.
Thank you, guys. We actually just got a Twitter question that I think is appropriate to add in right now. We had someone ask how much emphasis should be placed on team building activities from the pitch. For example, team outings. We'll start with you, Sam.
I knew it. I think you do need to place some emphasis on it. For me personally, so far, I place that emphasis in preseason a lot of the time, because that's that point where you've got new faces and stuff like that, and whether it's something as simple as a scavenger hunt on campus to kind of going off campus and paintball and something like that, those are things I've done in the past, and they've both worked really well. I think the hardest part as a coach is maintaining that over the season, because for me, oftentimes you get complacent and think, the players are taking care of that, they're hanging out outside of practice and stuff like that, and that's not always the case. So sometimes I think, mid-season, whether it's, let's have a team dinner before this game tomorrow, or, we've just had a tough practice, let's do this together. Or even in the spring, hey, this spring we're going to go off campus and maybe go to a local school and do this activity with the kids. Simple things like that, like a periodical every, few weeks or every month or something like that. I do think it's really important, and I think it's one thing that us as coaches can often forget about with everything else that's going on around us.
I think, if I can chime in a little bit, I think one thing, you're totally right, Samantha, I think you can dictate a certain amount as a coach, and so you need to be really intentional about those things that you can dictate. And I think we've all kind of mentioned, or you mentioned preseason a little bit. I think for sure being really intentional in the preseason. Something that I've tried to do this year, and I think we've had some momentum with it, is, in preseason and even throughout the fall, was very intentional and sort of forced what we were going to be doing. And then now that the spring has kind of rolled around, we call it forced family time. And so I'm not there all the time, but it's structured for them. Actually, one of our seniors structures it to where I think one of you mentioned this, so you can do something similar as well. Like, there's an hour each week, and each guy's paired with a guy, and you have to spend an hour with your teammate. It doesn't sound that crazy, but I think you're totally right, Samantha. If we're not intentional about it, it might not happen. All of us working in a school setting or even a club setting may be even more difficult in that there's a lot going on for our players. we're not at professional clubs to where like this is the only thing they have. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind. And so being intentional and structuring it for them, but also giving enough room to where it's their ownership, you're enabling them to own it, I think gives it a little bit deeper roots, maybe a little bit more commitment from their end. So being intentional about, in some ways, giving it over to them. And then when preseason rolls around next year, and we have, we'll have a lot of new players come next preseason, that's a time probably for me to be more intentional, me to force it and dictate what we're doing, and then eventually over time give it back into their hands.
Yeah, can I add one thing to that too?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I think I really like talking about the idea of, kind of intentionally pairing people with someone, or intentionally kind of forcing them, giving them structured time to hang out together or do something to get to know each other better. I think it's good in it, but we have to make sure that, I always try and be intentional about like pushing them out of their comfort zone too, and making sure that they're not paired with their best friend on the team or someone they spend a lot of time with anyway. You were saying, Luke, about it's a challenge. It would probably be a challenge in club soccer, and it certainly is because my girls, some of them live an hour apart from each other, so and they're 13, so they can't drive anywhere. So to get them to spend time together every week doesn't always work. But when we have out-of-town tournaments, or when we have a weekend where we have to spend the night in a hotel or whatever it is, I always try and put them in rooms, because they stay in rooms together when we travel instead of staying with their parents. And so I put them with girls that they are not typically the best of friends with, so ones they don't necessarily go to school with, just to push them out of their comfort zone. I think that's important too, to push them out of their comfort zone, to get to know someone that they might not naturally hang out with, but is still their teammate and they could want to get to know. So kind of pushing them out of their comfort zone, I think, is important with team bonding. That's how they're going to get closer, is if they're uncomfortable. If they're comfortable, then everyone's just going to stay at the status quo, I feel like.
I think along to what Luke said about the leaders.
I agree, and from the club perspective, I coach obviously ODP and club here in Kansas, so the tournament idea is great. Having the team go out to dinner, doing stuff in the hotel that builds a little bit of chemistry. I do classroom sessions with my girls, so we'll go sit in the classroom at one of the local colleges or JUCOs, and we'll sit down and we'll watch film, and we'll watch YouTube videos that they really enjoy about the games. So I think incorporating those outings to answer it at least once a month. I think twice, 3 times a month if you're in youth, and as you get to high school and college, where you guys primarily are, that becomes something that has intent. I think that was a great word, that you intend to do that. So coaches, how do we inspire and create a culture of winning? So how does that, from an internal perspective, how do we know where to steer the boat? Sam?
You see me? Again, always first. I think one of the big things is, if you want to create a culture of winning, is that you've always just got to get them in the habit of wanting to win. I think that's the hardest thing, especially with girls. Luke, you coach guys.
Yeah.
You might not have that much of a problem, but with girls, it's like they don't want to go up against their best friend, they don't want to beat their best friend, and stuff like that. So it's a case of setting an environment and practice of, let's do this shooting drill. We're going to kind of take scores, and whoever wins gets priority of getting water first or something, and whoever loses, well, you guys are the ones that pick up the cones. You've got to kind of put in a little incentive that makes them want to win, because I think there's too many soccer players, especially females right now, that don't have that just natural response to I want to be a winner, especially at the lower levels. I think at the higher levels, like Division 1, stuff like that, those are the girls that already have that, and that's why they're playing at that level. But at the lower levels, at the younger youth age, it's more of a case of I don't want to go in for that hard tackle because I don't want to hurt my friend and stuff like that. So that's the hardest thing you have to overcome.
I think the teams that I've been a part of that have had the greatest desire, that have strived the hardest together to win, that have been maybe you would say the most competitive, there's just a correlation. There just is a correlation between those teams and the teams that have the strongest and tightest and most positive culture. And I think getting the culture right, if you can get your culture right, if you can have, we've all mentioned things about unselfishness. We've all mentioned things about putting the team before themselves. We've all mentioned things about serving their teammates. If you can have those things be really big priorities within your team, I don't know that you're going to have to really inspire winning a whole lot. I think that if I'm having to really inspire the team to win, sure, I might say something to motivate. I might say something to help them strategize. But I think the inspiration comes from when we're in a huddle before the game and they just look around and see the people that they are closest with, that they're about to go into a match with. And that is the inspiration. My hope is that the team, the group, is the inspiration for each other. And I think what is most important about that is that it's not them versus the team first, right? We've all mentioned those kind of things. And so that should be the inspiration. The culture should be the inspiration. The people that have come before you, I think, we talked about components and indicators, a little bit of culture previously. I think alumni base is a great way to see that. How tight is your alumni? We have alumni come back to games a lot. And I know that the guys on the team know that there's alumni there and they want to make them proud. And they also have memories of playing with guys that have come before us. And so having a tight team culture, knowing that it's now, okay, my time to carry that banner, I think sort of is the inspiration to win.
If I can sort of build off that a little bit, Luke mentioned earlier about leadership, and I think it's those leaders being the ones that are really leading the way, that they're the ones that are working the hardest, modeling the way. Right now, sort of our tagline for the spring has been to finish strong, and that's every workout, every rep, every run, are you laying it all out the field? And I think if you see your teammates doing that, you're in self going to turn and don't want to let them down. And the more that you can push your teammates to make them better, the more they're going to push you to make you better, and that just rises the ship. So the idea of iron sharpening iron. And so it comes in with an installation of this is what we do, and you're inspired when you see someone make a sliding save or make that finish touch. So it's all the little details. You never know when that time's going to come, so be ready to serve your part in your role. Really, whatever you do, if it's on the field or even just in your relationships in the classroom, how can you really finish strong and be proud of your effort at the end of the day?
That's great, guys. Really, really, really good stuff. I think you guys are touching on not only actual things to do with your team, but some of the, not necessarily theory, but some of the personality traits that you might have to deal with. One of the Twitter questions asked us, how do you guys handle players that don't buy into the culture that you've created?
Well, I think there's always going to be, especially I can say for the college environment, you're only able to get so close to the accurate picture of the player that you're bringing into your program. So I think one way you avoid that is by building relationships and really getting to know and being intentional about the type of people that you bring into your program. That being said, there's all kinds of stuff out about recruiting now and services, and lots of voices going into the ears of players where they can put a pretty good picture in front of you about who they are as a person, and you get a kid into your program and you realize, wow, that's not who I thought I was getting. The important part then is I think that your critical mass, the majority of your program is moving in a direction to where those outliers aren't creating a subculture, but they're being pulled with the flow, the current of your culture. And that they get there and they realize, even if it's something that they had said they'd be bought into, but they might not be once they get there, or they find it difficult when they're not playing very much. It's obviously a big component to if they're really going to be bought into the culture, 11 people playing at a time. So even if it's something that they struggle with, the culture is too strong for them just to stand aside. And it's going to pull those people with it. Because you're always going to have some people that are going to struggle to be a part of things. I think that's going to happen. But making sure that your culture is moving in a direction that you want it to, as a coach, you can dictate those things, and that it's bringing those people that might find it difficult with you.
Anyone else have anything to add about dealing with a player who's difficult and not buying into that culture?
I think it goes back to your leadership, too. Have the upperclassmen really talk with them first and sort of explain this is what we're about and this is what we want to help you to sort of see. And note, too, like if it's a freshman versus maybe a junior or senior, the freshman's going to have time to grow. And so there's a couple times where it's like, hey, it might not be where you want it today, But that's why we're coaches. We're hoping to grow and mentor them throughout that process and help them to finally buy in and be there. And so it's coming alongside of them and saying, why is it important? Like, this is what we're about, and hopefully giving them maybe some roles that, like, hey, this is how you can sort of be a part of that. Bring them along versus pushing them away, for them to decide where they want to do and what they want to be a part of.
Coaches, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Can you guys try muting it until I
Yeah.
don't ask you? Yeah, it's a little bit. There you go. All right, guys. So this is another big question. I think it's a hot topic that's been going around. You know, social media is an important play in recruiting. One of our Twitter followers asked us, this team culture affect the way you run it, who you recruit and select. So knowing your team culture and the type of players you want, does that affect how you recruit players?
I'll go ahead and answer that. I think it does. I mean, you know, it's a little easier to find out about players. Like Luke was saying, you can talk to their coaches and stuff like that. But you know, when you meet a player, you have to judge them based on, you know, what they present to you, whether it's on a recruiting visit or stuff like that. I think for me, I try and ask questions that almost figure out, like, you know, how strong is their love for the game? Because I think if they have a really, you know, strong desire to play the game and love soccer, whether they've been playing forever, and just kind of the answers they give us with certain questions tells us, you know, this player is probably going to be someone I'm not going to have to worry about. And kind of like their general attitude when, you know, you meet them, you know, if you ask them questions and they seem kind of, you know, very generic or disinterested, you're like, you know, this person might be a little bit more difficult, or might be someone that I might have to deal with in the future. So I think it's a thing where you reach out to as many of their coaches as possible and find out, but then also you've got to kind of take that responsibility for yourself to, when you meet them, make a good judgment of character and you know, kind of go with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we definitely try to find their Twitter and see the kind of things that they're putting out there for other people to read. It's amazing the conversations you have sometimes with kids, and you go look at their Twitter and like, wow, that is not the impression that I got of that kid, you know? That definitely happens. I think one of the best ways to find that kind of thing out is when we bring them on campus. I do spend time with the players, obviously, but I try to have them spend more time with our current players than with me. And then I think, at least for us, it does two things. One, I think our guys are our best selling point. And I think our culture is one of our best selling points here. So players come here and they realize, wow, this is a group that I would want to be a part of. They're very tight-knit. They have great relationships. They really care about each other. They go out of their way to help each other. They're, I think, in a lot of ways, a brotherhood. And then because of that, guys are pretty protective of that group. And it goes beyond how much quality a player has. And obviously, if I'm bringing a kid in to visit, you know, the guys know I've already seen him play, and I know he's quality enough to play, and now we're trying to get him to come here. But part of it is also almost an interview process on the recruit's behalf, in that I then bring the guys that he stayed with into the office, and I say, what do you think? You know, what was he talking about? Did he talk about himself a lot, or was he asking you questions, and was he very intrigued about the way that we interact with each other? And, did he not really say anything at all? I mean, what kind of person was he? And usually, I think you give the players the benefit of the doubt and the opportunity to do that, and they're going to give you a really accurate picture of what that player is like.
Lizzie, Jennifer, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll chime in for a second. I mean, I don't coach college, so the whole recruiting thing I can't really relate to, but I can certainly like attest to what Luke said, that I remember in college, our coach would always ask us just, you know, how did it go with the recruit, like, you know, just asking us how it went. So I think that's a big, if they fit into the team, you know, immediately, that's a good, if I were a coach, that's something I would be interested in for sure. But if they were awkward and didn't talk, then they're not going to fit in as well, you know. And, you know, they're going to be nervous and things like that, so you have to take that into consideration, obviously. But I think getting the player's opinion after a visit or something like that, I think is a great idea, that if I ever coached college, I think that's something I would certainly do.
Yeah, I think along with the players is, even as your coaching staff, just have a consistent message. Because if you let the recruits know, all right, this is what we're about as a program, they see it from just how the team acts in the locker room, if different messages are up. If you're consistent and true to your message, they'll get an understanding of like, okay, do I see myself here? Do I fit? And then same thing, we'd ask the girls too, all right, how does this person, what do you guys think? Because all it takes is one or two sort of bad apples to take your team the wrong direction. So it's very intentional about who you bring in, what you're about, and then for those who might be a little bit rough around the edges, it's like how can we help them grow and be a part of that process.
So pretty similar sentiments, I think, across the board from you guys about that it does affect the way you recruit, the way you bring a kid into your program. Coach, did you have anything else to add, Jennifer? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if I did.
No, that's it.
All right. So as we kind of start wrapping it up here, the final question, and this goes to the whole group really, is do you have any advice for coaches out there who are starting a program, or maybe it was Lizzie, that, oh no, it was Jennifer. I got it. It was Jennifer that mentioned starting a program from the ground up, or have been in the game a long time and maybe need a change of culture. So do you have any advice for coaches out there that are needing a change of pace, or how to restructure the culture in, our modern times and evolving with us as a young panel of coaches?
Can I chime in on that first?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like I said before, this is something I've been dealing with my team, my high school team in particular right now, of just how do I create that team culture? Because I probably haven't done a very good job of that in the past, and I've realized that recently, so I've been working on fixing it. But I think just using your contacts and just talking to people from different environments. My mentor through the 30 Under 30 program is Alice Ann Wilbur up in New York, and she coaches college soccer. But I called her and said, hey, give me some ideas, and it just just kind of inspired me to think of different things and kind of get creative with it. And so I think just getting an outsider's perspective, someone who is not a part of your program, someone who's been there before, who can, say, hey, this is what we did, here's how it worked, and, maybe you can tweak it this way for your team. So I think just bouncing ideas off of other coaches who've been there or who even are in the same boat, who are kind of going through the same struggles, if that's something that you're dealing with. I think just bouncing ideas off of each other and, kind of trying to get creative with it so that it doesn't get stale and doesn't get monotonous or too routine, because then players will get bored, and I think that's not going to inspire them to create a team culture if they're bored or, it's the same routine over and over again.
I think echoing what Lizzie was saying, just talk with other people, also talk with other sports. So, in our athletic department, there's a lot of there's basketball, volleyball coaches. Culture is culture, just isn't like isolated to soccer. So a lot of times if I need suggestions, I'll go just down the hall, talk with someone else. And I think it's important to remember that it's never too late. So if things are going bad, all right, you don't have to wait till the end of the season. Start in the middle of the season and start talking about, all right, what do we want to be about? How does this go? And don't wait till it's too late on the other hand. If things are going really well, like, okay, we have a great team culture, let's just sort of go ahead. Well, maybe 2 months down the road, something might change. That it's got to be continually talked about, reinforced of who are we, what do we want to be about. And just, I think the whole word we use this session is be intentional. Be intentional about the cultures, be intentional about the leaders, getting them to buy in, and really taking time, because it does matter. And at the end of the day, the team is going to remember more the team culture than some of the practices. And so it's like, all right, what's that value, and how can I really help these people grow and use soccer as an avenue for it?
And I think one of the big things is if you're a coach who's been part of a team already and you're trying to create a new team culture, you don't just want to go one day from doing this, 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 and this, and then completely flipping everything and doing this, 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 and this, because the players are going to be like, oh my God, what's going on? You need to kind of take it slowly and kind of implement certain things at certain times. And one thing that I found to be quite effective is I kind of somewhat relinquished some control of the players. So I would ask them, just simple things like when we're on road trips, like, where would you guys like to eat if we had to pick somewhere? Or, what type of snacks do you girls want us to do? Or even stuff like picking up the equipment out. It wasn't no longer freshmen are doing everything, which is sometimes the case in a lot of programs. It's kind of like the initiation. But I thought, hey, let's get everyone in on it, because if you want to have a good team culture and you want to be a team, then everyone should be kind of contributing to that, whether it's, anything from collecting the cones or moving the goal before practice, right?
Yeah, I think, awesome points. I've really enjoyed talking with you guys, and I feel like I've got some things now to go back and implement myself. I think one of the keys is whether you're a young coach like all of us, or like you mentioned, a coach that wants to change their culture. The reality is that there's going to be a culture in your team. It's not like you're going to have a culture or you're not. Like, there's going to be one. It's whether or not you want to dictate what that looks like, and you want to influence and decide what your team culture is going to be. And as the coach, as the leader, you have that, I think, responsibility to create that for the players. And then once you've created that and you've dictated and you've mapped out what that's going to look like for your individual program, and that should fit your personality. I took over a program here at Indiana Wesley that had a strong culture and was winning. So it's been an interesting journey for me to change that, because I'm not the previous coach. So it would have been foolish for me to just keep that culture because it didn't fit my personality. Does that make sense? So I think, for me, it was important to make sure that our culture changes to where it does fit my personality, but it maintains positive. So kind of like you said, Samantha, I've had to, realize and be humble in some ways, like, wow, that was a great idea that they used to do. I'm going to keep that because that really helped the culture. Or this is just not the way I would necessarily do things, so this is going to change a little bit. Either way, there's going to be a culture, and you have to decide to dictate it. That's whether you're a new coach or a coach that's been coaching for a long time. And I think the important other thing is we've all mentioned intentionality, and I think we've all mentioned time. And I think culture is the kind of thing you want to change in a day, and it takes, I'm learning, to be honest with you, that it takes years. I've been here for a year, and I feel like maybe our culture is just now kind of starting to look like a little bit of what I maybe envisioned it to be. And so giving it time, but being, like we've all mentioned, being intentional. So dictating it, but giving it time.
Right, and the one thing I love about the 30 Under 30 program personally and the NSCAA is that it provides that platform to share those ideas. Unless the coaches have anything else to add to today's program, does anyone have anything else to add about team culture, any examples you've had in your programs, or any things we've talked about so far?
I think the 5 of us have a great team culture.
Agreed, Sam.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Thanks again to our panel of our 4 distinguished coaches, 30 to 30, and all the viewers that are out there. And the Twitter questions were great, by the way. Thank you. The NSCAA would like to remind you to start planning your summer coaching education now, and check out the full master course today. It does have that opportunity, like these coaches all mentioned, of ideas and networking to create culture, to see how other people run their programs and their culture, and it's really just an excellent investment in your future education and maybe opening your eyes or switching gears for you as a coach. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week at our 30 Under 30 live chat. Bye-bye.